was especially merciful to the fallen. He prayed that the Lord of the universe would not be offended by his reception at New Jagannath Puri. When the kirtan ended, Swamiji asked Haridas to bring him the candle. Swamiji passed his hands across the flame and touched them to his forehead. Yes, he said, show everyone, each and everyone, whatever they can contribute. Here, take it like this and show everyone. He indicated that Haridas should present the candle before each person in the room so that all present could touch their hands to the flame as he had shown, and then touch their foreheads. As Haridas went from person to person, a few devotees dropped some coins on the plate and others followed. Swamiji explained further, the Bhagavatam has recommended hearing, chanting, thinking, and worshipping. This process, which we just now introduced on the advent of Jagannath Swami, means that now this temple is now completely fixed. So this is the worshipping process. This is called Arti. So at the end of Kirtan, the Arti will go on. And the worshipping process is to take the heat of the light and whatever your condition is, pay something for the worship. So this simple process, if you follow, you just see how you realize absolute truth. Another thing I request you, all the devotees, when you come to the temple, you bring one fruit and one flower. If you can bring more fruit, more flower, it's very good. If not, it is not very expensive to bring one fruit and one flower and offer it to the deity. So I will request you, when you come to the temple, you bring this, whatever fruit it may be. It means that you have to bring very costly fruit, any fruit, whatever you can afford, one fruit and one flower. He paused, looking around the room. Yes, now you can distribute prasadam. The guests sat on rows on the floor, and the devotees began serving prasadam, offering the first plate to Swamiji. The food preparations were those Swamiji had personally taught the devotees in his kitchen: samosa, halava, puris, rice, several cooked vegetables, fruit chutneys, sweets, all the Sunday specials. The guests loved the prasadam and ate as much as they could get, while the devotees, especially the expert women, served more and more prasadam. The guests relaxed and enjoyed an evening of fast feasting and convivial conversation. After Swamiji had tasted all the preparations, he looked up with raised eyebrows. Very nice preparations. All glories to the cookers. Prabhupada had his own way of speaking. All glories to the cookers. So here Prabhupada showing the simple Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, that we offer something to Krishna. When we come to the temple, we don't come empty-handed. So, of course, that doesn't mean to say that the devotees who are living in the temple, every time they come up, they have to find a fruit and a flower. They're already giving everything. We're doing service all day. This is more meaningful than a fruit or a flower. But Prabhupada was showing that everyone who comes to the temple, they should bring something, and we should be. Everyone can afford to do a little devotional service. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 5, entitled Narada Muni Cursed by Prajapati Daksha, Text 20. Shastrasya Pitur Adesham Shastrasya Pitur Adesham Yo Na Veda Nivartakam Yo Na Veda Nivartakam Katam Tad or Katam Tad Anurupaya Katam Tad Anurupaya Guna Vishrambi Upakramet Guna Vishrambhupakramet Shastrasya Pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Katam tad anurupaya Gunavishram pakramet Shastrasya pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Katam Tadanurupaya Guna Vishrambhupakramet Shastrasya Pitur Adesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Katam Tadanurupaya Guna Vishrambhupakramet. Please chant.
Shastrasya pituradesham Shastrasya pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Katantat Anurupaya Gunavishram Shastrasya pituradesham Shastrasya pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Samtat Anurupaya Guna Vishram Shastrasya pituradesham Shastrasya pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Namtadanurupaya Guna Vishram Shastrasya pituradesham Yona Veda Nivartakam Namtadanurupaya Guna Vishram Vipakramet.
Would you like to try?
Shastrasya pituradesham
Shastrasya pituradesham
Yona Veda Nivartakam
Yona Veda Nivartakam
Katam Tadanurupaya
Katam Tadanurupaya Guna Vishram Vipakramet.
Shastrasya of the scriptures, who of the Father, Adesham, the instruction, Ya, one who, Na, not, Veda, understands, Nivar, to come, which brings about the cessation of the material way of life, Katam, how, Tad Anurupaya, to follow the instruction of the Shastras, Gunavishrambi, a person entangled in the three modes of material nature, Upakramet, can engage in the creation of progeny. Translation. Narada Muni had asked how one could ignorantly defy one's own father. The Haryashvas understood the meaning of this question. One must accept the original instructions of the Shastra. According to Vedic civilization, one is offered the sacred thread as a sign of second birth. One takes a second birth by dint of having received instructions in the Shastra from a bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, Shastra, scripture, is the real father. All the Shastras instruct that one should end his material way of life. If one does not know the purpose of the Father's orders, the Shastras, he is ignorant. The words of a material father who endeavors to engage his son in material activities are not the real instructions of the Father. Please repeat. Narada Muni had asked how one could ignorantly defy one's own father. The Haryashvas understood the meaning of this question. One must accept the original instructions of the Shastra. According to Vedic civilization, one is offered a sacred thread as a sign of second birth. One takes his second birth by dint of having received instructions. In the Shastra, from a bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, Shastra, scripture, is the real father. All the Shastras instruct should end his material way of life. If one does not know the purpose of the Father's orders, the Shastras, he is ignorant. The words of a material father who endeavors to engage his son in material activities are not the real instructions of the Father. So Prabhupada's purport. It's a long purport, so get comfortable. Not too comfortable. Bhagavad Gita 16:7 says, Pravritam cha nivritam cha janana vidur asura. Demons who are less than human beings but are not called animals do not know the meaning of pravriti and nivriti, work to be done and work not to be done. In the material world, every living entity has a desire to lord it over the material world as much as possible. This is called pravriti marg. All the Shastras, however, advise nivriti marg, or release from the materialistic way of life. Apart from the Shastras of the Vedic civilization, which is the oldest of the world, other Shastras agree on this point. For example, in the Buddhist Shastra, Lord Buddha advises that one achieve nirvana by giving up the materialistic way of life. In the Bible, which is also Shastra, one will find the same advice. One should cease materialistic life and return to the kingdom of God. In any Shastra, one may examine, especially the Vedic Shastra, the same advice is given, and one should give up his materialistic life and return to his original spiritual life. Shankaracharya also propounds the same conclusion, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This material world or materialistic life is simply illusion, and therefore one should stop his illusory activities and come to the platform of Brahman. The word Shastra refers to the scriptures, particularly the Vedic books of knowledge, Vedas, Samar, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva, and any other books deriving knowledge from these Vedas are considered Vedic literatures. Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge, and therefore it is the scripture whose instructions should be especially accepted. In this essence of all Shastras, Krishna personally advises that one give up all other duties and surrender unto him. Sarvadharmam parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. One should be initiated into following the principles of Shastra. In offering initiation, our Krishna consciousness movement asks one to come to the conclusion of Shastra by taking the advice of the supreme speaker of the Shastra, Krishna, forgetting the principles of the materialistic way of life. Therefore, the principles we advise are no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, and no meat eating. These 4 types of engagement will enable an intelligent person to get free from the materialistic life and return home back to Godhead. In regard to the instructions of the father and mother, it may be said that every living entity, including even the insignificant cats, dogs, and serpents, takes birth of a father and mother. Therefore, getting a material father and mother is not a problem. In every form of life, birth after birth, the living entity gets a father and mother. In human society, however, it is if one is satisfied with his material father and mother and their instructions and does not make further progress by accepting a spiritual master and being educated in the Shastras, he certainly remains in darkness. Material father and mother are important only if they are interested in educating their son to become free from the clutches of death. As instructed by Rishabdev Bhagavatam 5.5.18, Pitana Sasyaj, Janani Sasyaj, Namochayad Yasamupetya Mrityum. One should not strive to become a mother or father if one cannot save one's dependent son from the impending danger of death. A parent who does not know how to save his son has no value because such fathers and mothers may be had in any form of life. even among the cats, dogs, and so on. Only a father and mother who can elevate their son to the spiritual platform are bona fide parents. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, it is said, Janmana Jayate Shudra. One is born of a material father and mother as a Shudra. The purpose of life, however, is to become a Brahmin, a first-class man. First-class intelligent man is called a Brahmin because he knows the Supreme Brahman, the absolute truth. According to the Vedic instructions, Tad Vigyanartam Saguram Eva Bigachet. To know this science, one must approach a bona fide guru, a spiritual master who will initiate the disciple with the sacred thread so that he may understand the Vedic knowledge. Janmana Jayate Shudra Samskaradi Bhaved Dvija. Becoming a Brahmin through the endeavour of a bona fide spiritual master is called samskar. After initiation, one is engaged in study of the Shastra, which teaches the student how to gain release from materialistic life and return home back to Godhead. The Krishna conscious movement is teaching this higher knowledge of retiring from materialistic life to return to Godhead, but unfortunately many parents are not very satisfied with this movement. Aside from the parents of our students, many businessmen are also dissatisfied because we teach our students to abandon intoxication, meat eating, illicit sex, and gambling. If the Krishna conscious movement spreads, the so-called businessmen will have to close their slaughterhouses, breweries, and cigarette factories. Therefore, they are also very much afraid. However, we have no alternative than to teach our disciples to free themselves from materialistic life. We must instruct them in the opposite of material life to save them from the repetition of birth and death. Narada Muni therefore advised the Haryashvas, the son of Prajapati Daksha, that instead of begetting progeny, it would be better to leave and achieve the perfection of spiritual understanding according to the instructions of the Shastras. The importance of the Shastras is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Yashastra vidim utsrujya vartate ka kamakarata na sasidim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. One who disregards the injunctions of the Shastras and acts whimsically as he likes never achieves the perfection of life, not to speak of happiness, nor does he return home to the spiritual world. Jnanatimirandasya Granjana Salakaya Chakshunmilitam Yana Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangamlagate Girim Yakripatamam Vande Shri Girim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Narada Muni had asked how one could ignorantly defy one's own father. The Haryashvas understood the meaning of this question. One must accept the original instructions of the Shastra. According to Vedic civilization, one is offered a sacred thread as a sign of second birth. One takes a second birth by dint of having received instructions in the Shastra from a bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, Shastra scripture is the real father. All the Shastras instruct that one should end his material way of life. If one does not know the purpose of his father's orders, the Shastras, he is ignorant. The words of a material father who endeavour to engage his son in material activities are not the real instructions of the father. So for anyone who's confused about whether they should follow the path of Krishna consciousness or listen to their parents who tell them don't do it, then that makes it quite clear. And Prabhupada makes this point that it's not difficult to find a mother and father in this material world. Simply, for one who is born, death is certain. For one who's died, birth is certain. So that's carried on by the material nature. One is given another birth, so it's not something wonderful. The soul is eternal, and unless it goes to the eternal atmosphere, then it automatically takes birth again in the material world. So to achieve a mother and father in the material world is not difficult. We don't have to even endeavour for that. It just happens. So the real mother and father, sometimes the Shastras are referred to as mother. Has anyone heard that? Sometimes, and then who's in that regard, who's considered the father? And then the example is that if you want to know who your father is, then ask your mother if there's any doubt. And most of the time, your mother can tell you who your father is. Sometimes it's not always the case. But this is Kali Yuga, isn't it? The family unit isn't always as kept together as it was traditionally. So in this regard, the Shastras are the mother. They say, who's the father? So Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Govindamadi Purusham Tamam Bhajami. These so many different verses we can find in so many Shastras which are pointing to that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So above all the demigods and above all the other incarnations, and Krishna is known as Swayam Bhagavan, the original person full of all opulences. See, even sometimes Narada Muni is called Bhagavan Narad. So someone who has great opulence, they're called Bhagavan. But nowadays, what people consider to be opulence, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the objects of false prestige are falsely prestigious. Someone thinks that they're opulent if they drive a Ferrari and they have a house with a swimming pool. But really, what is the value of such things? Like one time, the devotees, out of respect, they picked up Prabhupada from the airport. They'd hired a Rolls Royce, and some of the reporters were a bit envious, and they says, "Oh, why are they picking you up in a Rolls Royce?" He says, "Why not a gold Rolls Royce?" He says, "What is this Rolls Royce anyway? It's just some tin." And so Prabhupada is not enamored by these objects of false prestige. Of course, this is a devotee's service. They're thinking the spiritual master should have the best, so they want to offer the best, and that's fine. But really, what is the best of the material world? Some tin and rubber and plastic. And people think, oh, this is of great value. And Prabhupada, he's not enamored. It's like, what is it anyway? This has no real value. So Prabhupada teaches us that the real value of life is grains and ghee. Materially, if you want to look at wealth, then grains and ghee. Traditionally in India, if someone was getting married, then the parents of the daughter would go to the parents of the son and say, okay, what are your stocks of ghee? What are your stocks of grain? They wouldn't say how much money you got in the bank, because you can't eat money. You can't eat nuts and bolts. So this would be the responsible thing to do, that now I know that you can look after my daughter, so therefore you can have, in this regard, they would be taking care of the welfare of their children. But nowadays, the values of life are quite different. We're led to believe that certain things are of value, but ultimately, just like since the pandemic, people are reevaluating their life. What is the real value of things? Many people are not even going back to work. They prefer to work at home, or they prefer not to go back to a job which they felt was dissatisfying, and they found something else to do. Just like we're finding there's some shortage of staff at the airports on account of them not wanting to go back to work and finding something more meaningful or more lucrative for themselves. And this is typically the material mentality. We're always trying to better ourselves materially. But this is, ultimately, this is intellectual animalism. We're simply eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And we're doing it in a way which we're trying to improve it. Like if we eat from a gold plate or we eat from a paper plate, then, if it's the same meal, really what's the difference? I mean, you could argue that gold has so much health benefits, and when you serve onto the gold plate, it may create some health benefits. But ultimately, if you're looking like that, then serve onto a banana leaf. That'll give you more health benefits. But the thing is that when you're sleeping, providing you can get to sleep, then you're not aware of where you are, where you're sleeping. You're not thinking, I'm lying on this dirty rubbish mattress, or you're thinking, I'm lying on this silk cloth. We're not like that. The dog is not aware. It's just we're entering into a dream state. And like Prabhupada says, for sex life, then someone gets a fancy apartment and they furnish it very nicely, whereas the dogs and the animals, they just go on with their business and then go on with the rest of their business. And then defending, he says that the animal defends with its claws or its teeth or some other form of defense. If you look through the animal and insect kingdom, in the fish kingdom, we see so many amazing ways of defending themselves. Some animals have got such very unique ways of defending themselves. But ultimately, what's the difference? The humans are still defending. Instead of using claws and teeth, they're using bombs and bullets. Previously, they used bow and arrow, and now they think they're much more advanced. But what have they advanced from? They're still engaging in this defending and attacking. So they haven't advanced beyond the stage of false sense of proprietorship, thinking that this land is mine, that is yours. I want a bit more, so I'm going to kill a few of your people so you give in. And it's a false sense of proprietorship. So unless and until people come to understand that nothing belongs to us, then this material misery is going to be perpetuated. So therefore, the more we understand that and the more we can help others understand that, then they will spread that. And ultimately, Krishna consciousness is the solution to the world's problems. All the various solutions that people are all offering are simply taking the load from the head to the shoulder. That example is sometimes you're carrying a heavy load on your head and then you think, oh, let me put it on my shoulder. And then that becomes tired, let me put it on another shoulder, and back on the head again. And so this is what's happening with all these material adjustments. And the material energy is endlessly mutable, so we can just go on making adjustments forevermore. So there's only one adjustment which is really going to make the difference, is to listen to the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So this is what Narada Muni is advising Hari Ashwas. So I haven't been following this, but from memory, I remember that there was it 10,000 Hari Ashwas? Yeah, and then if later on there's going to be another 1,000 sons. So spoiler alert, the Hari Ashwas, the progeny of Daksha, Prajapati Daksha, one of the forefathers of the human race. And he created these sons for the purpose of that they would create so many more living entities. But Narada Muni, at this point, he wasn't a traveling mendicant. He had his ashram, and the Hari Ashwas were staying in his ashram. Narada Muni was given the duty to educate them so they could perform their materialistic duties. So that was instruction from Prajapati Daksha, their father. But Narada Muni, he surpassed that instruction by referring to the instructions of the real father, the Shastra. So here, Shastra is referred to not as mother, but as father. And in this way, he sent them back to Godhead. He told them the real duty is not simply to get entangled in the material world, but to get free from this material world. And showed them how to do it. And we'll find that they did. And Daksha wasn't so happy with that. Prabhupada makes the point, if he hasn't already, in other purports later on, he says that even in modern day International Society for Krishna Consciousness, some parents are not happy that their children are leaving their so-called jobs and education and materialistic life and coming to a life where they're giving all that up. So he said this is nothing new. When the spiritual master is given instruction to how to give up your material life, and because the parents invest so much into the children, then the children are sometimes feeling duty-bound to reciprocate with the parents, and that's a good quality, that one is not ungrateful and one wants to reciprocate if someone's put a lot of energy into trying to help you. But ultimately, at the time of death. If we simply have done our material duties and we don't go back to Godhead, then that was not the highest benefit for us or for them. On the other hand, whatever material knowledge we have, if we utilize it in Krishna's service, then those who have educated us, those who have taught us, who have guided us, then they get the benefit. So just like one becomes a devotee and their parents, their family members for many generations are liberated automatically, Krishna takes care of that. So this verse is quoted in the end of this purport here. Sarva dharmam prityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishami masuchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall protect you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. So this instruction was given to Arjuna. He had so many materialistic reasons why he didn't want to engage in his duty, but it was based on a temporary material compassion. Prabhupada, sometimes he'll say that material compassion is the beginning of devotion. So here we see Arjuna, his first arguments were of material compassion, but later on he accepted the higher understanding, which was a life of devotion, which is not limited to serving and loving just a small group of people who we call family and friends or society or nation, but our love and our mood of service is a greater service to the whole of humankind and beyond humans, also to other species. So, of course, if we do not know what is Dharma or nature, then we may have so many other ideas of our own. We have to be satisfied with our own versions of things. And this is mentioned that the more we try to lord over the material nature, the more we become entangled in her complexities. Because material nature is actually guided, guided by Maya Devi, Maya Jukshena. This material energy is like a wonderful machine, but it's not running without some operator, just like any machine. You may go to a factory and then you come to the end of the line and you see some product is made and you think, oh, what a wonderful machine, but that machine's not working without an operator. Even at least somebody has to press a button or program it to start. So this material world is considered to be like a great yantra or machine. And we become entangled in the workings of this machinery known as karma. Karma means action and reaction. So as long as we're performing some activity, there's some reaction. But devotional service or back to yoga means that we do action which is connected with Supreme, and therefore there's no reaction. And of course that doesn't mean to say we can do anything. It's not that you can just open up like a pub and just call it Krishna's bar or something like that and think, okay, that's all right, there's no karma involved here. It's not that you can open up a slaughterhouse and say, Govinda's butchers. You couldn't do like that. So therefore, Prabhupada talks about these 4 regulative principles, which are the pillars of Dharma, or for Dharma is actually, it's loosely translated as religious principles, but it doesn't quite really describe it. Dharma means nature, just like the Dharma of water is wet. The Dharma of fire, what's the Dharma of fire? And ouchie, yeah. Ouchiness. Light, heat and light together is fire, isn't it? So, and that's inseparable. If you take away either of those things, if you take away wetness from water, then it becomes ice or it becomes steam. So it takes a different form. So the Dharma of the living entity is seva or service. We're always having to serve. And sometimes people in their illusion think that if I just become top dog, then everyone's serving me. But even top dog, they have to serve, or otherwise some other top dog will knock them off and they become top dog. Like sometimes people, they make so many promises. Yes, if you vote me in, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll promise you the moon. And then they get in and what happens? Another disappointment. Isn't it? And even if they want to, there's so many restrictive factors there which are probably not known to us, that even if someone had some good intentions, then their good intentions are frustrated. So therefore we cannot wait on material perfection before we take to devotional service. And these principles of Dharma are truthfulness, mercy, cleanliness, and austerity. Truthfulness is destroyed by gambling. Mercy is destroyed by meat eating. Cleanliness is destroyed by sex life. And austerity is destroyed by intoxication. So the purpose of these things is, these are known as the four don'ts. And then there's the one do, which is to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And it's not just some kind of fashionable thing like, okay, we'll chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra now until everyone gets tired of it, and then we'll bring out another mantra. It's not. This week's number one in the mantra hit parade is Maha Mantra. Coming in at number 2 is Govinda Jaya Jaya. And the close number 3 is Shri Ram Jai Ram. No, it's Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam, Kalunas Jivan, Jiva Gatiranyata. That is recommended by Narada Muni, actually. Brihad Naradiya Purana. Puranas are very, very old. Puranic means old. Prana means old literatures, ancient. And it's recommended that in this age of Kali, then the most simplest and certain means of self-realization is to chant this Maha Mantra. That was also foretold in the Atharva Veda, that in Kali Yuga, the Supreme Lord will come in the guise of a devotee, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he will bring the chanting of his own holy name to teach the Yuga Dharma, and the mantra will consist of the 3 names, Hare, Krishna, and Rama. So these ancient scriptures are known even before Lord Chaitanya appeared. It's not that someone kind of just made these things up since Lord Chaitanya appeared. These scriptures are thousands of years before even Lord Chaitanya appeared. So it's not some kind of whimsical thing that we're doing. It's recommended by Shastra. So this is what Prabhupada has given us. He's our spiritual father, or spiritual grandfather, because we also have our own spiritual masters. But in principle, the spiritual master is the father, and the sadhus are the fathers, and the Shastras are the fathers, because they're given instructions how we can get out of this material entanglement. And one may be born as a Sudra or even less than Sudra, because Sudra means obedient to the other classes. It doesn't mean to say any less than, because without the Sudras, then there would be no meaning to the other classes. So all the classes are interdependent, just like all the parts of the body are interdependent. We think, well, the legs are not as important as the brain, so let me just cut my legs off. I don't really need them. Which crazy person would do that? So therefore, we're all interdependent on each other. The legs of the social body of human society, they're considered the Sudras. The arms are considered the Kshatriyas, which protect. And the head is considered the Brahmins, and the Vaishyas are considered the stomach of the body. And they all play a different part, but together, they all work together. And this way, there's harmony. But if one part of the body decides to not serve the others, then it will be chaos. So it's considered that in Kali Yuga, then everyone's less than Sudra. Why less than Sudra? Anybody? Why not just Sudra? Or why don't we have the other classes as well? Don't we have these classes in society already? The intellectual class, the Kshatriya class, the Vaishya class, don't we have them anyway?
Is it because less than Shudra? Is it because Shudra, his propensity is to serve the other three classes and he's doing it. But in Kali Yuga, people are generally so puffed up, they don't even want to follow even that serving mentality.
Yeah, they don't want to serve, they want to be the boss. But then that's because also they don't have any leaders which inspire them to serve. You see, sometimes someone who's born in less than a Sudra family, they become very, very wealthy. And immediately, somehow or another, people think that they're worth taking knowledge from just because they've got a lot of money. What happens if they lose it next week? Then nobody's interested in hearing anything from them. So how foolish is that? Just because somebody's wealthy, then somehow or another they're considered to be in knowledge. But what is that wealth? It's some temporary misunderstanding that I have so much wealth, and today or tomorrow they die, and then they don't have any wealth. So how did that help them? Even if one has got all the money in the world, then if their time's up, they can't stop it. They can get the best doctors, and they might be able to get a blood transfusion, this, that, and the next thing. But when their time's up, it's up. And even if they can afford the biggest army on the planet, it's not going to take them away from the fact that this material life is temporary. So unless people are giving knowledge which is going to illuminate people to this fact that we have a temporary material life and that we're simply chasing after the will of the wisp, we're chasing after the mirage, thinking that we're going to get some knowledge or thinking we're going to get some satisfaction. So this is the way the world's set up, that we're always anticipating that we're just going to get that carrot on the stick. The donkey's thinking, just one more step, I nearly got it there. If I can step quickly, then it will swing back and I'll get it. And then they just miss it. Because the owner of the donkey is clever enough, he's more clever than the donkey to know how to keep the carrot just out of reach and how to keep the donkey working to get that. And then at the end of the day, maybe he'll give the carrot or a little bit of the carrot or some hay. So human form life is meant for that. Of course, that doesn't mean to say that we become lazy. We should work hard for Krishna. We have to engage our mind and senses because we're very much affected by the mode of passion. So to engage our passionate activities in some kind of meaningful service, which is going to benefit us and benefit others, then this is good use of our human form of life. But ultimately, we have to realize, we have to keep on top of the purpose. We have to remain fixed on the purpose of why we're doing things. We shouldn't simply just, Prabhupada says that one shouldn't be satisfied to remain a Sudra, one should try to become Brahmin, to rise to the intelligent class. An intelligent class doesn't necessarily mean to say we have to go to university or something. It means that we have to understand what is the difference between spirit and matter. So this is what is meant by Brahman. Brahman means spirit. So a Brahmin is one who knows how to discriminate between matter and spirit. And Shastra makes it very clear what is that difference. In Bhagavad Gita especially, we find in the 2nd chapter, Krishna explains in so many verses what is the soul and what is the body, what is the difference, how we can understand that. And in this way, it's not so difficult to understand. And then we start to try to put into practice in a daily practical way. So Narada Muni is about to get himself into trouble here because he's advising the Haryashvas that instead of begetting progeny, better to just leave that and achieve the perfection of spiritual understanding and get out of this material world once and for all. So this is the courage of the spiritual master, that Narada Muni knows that Daksha's not going to be pleased with him. But he says, well, his mind is too bad. If they go back home to Godhead, it doesn't matter if Daksha's unhappy with me. And then again, he does it with the next 1,000 sons, and then he gets cursed. And and he gets cursed that he can never stay in one place, so therefore he doesn't have an ashram, he just travels everywhere. And finally, this verse is given in Bhagavad Gita regarding one who disregards the injunction of Shastras and acts whimsically as he likes, never achieves the perfection of life, not to speak of happiness, nor does he return home to the spiritual world. So there are many distractions from understanding the goal of life. And sometimes these distractions can take form in the way of moralistic ideals or so many other kind of ideals. Sometimes even we see Arjuna when he was in when Krishna was speaking Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna gave so many moralistic ideas of why he didn't want to engage in his duty. But Krishna told him that this is simply destiny, that all these soldiers were destined to perish anyway. So it's as long as we maintain our own idea, we won't be able to understand the higher idea. I remember once my godsister Palindri, she gave me a good lesson. I was asked to do something which I couldn't really get my head around. And she says, well, that's the nature of spiritual life, is that if you try to understand it with your material intelligence, you can't just kind of capture that spiritual concept with your material intelligence. You have a limited understanding of it. But when you engage in it, then you'll see. So then I said, okay, well, let me try it. And I did. And then I could see. So this is just a kind of like the frog in the well, is that we think whatever we can conceive of is the limits of our environment. And if we can't see it or we can't conceive of it beyond our own concept of things, then it doesn't exist. But if we take, we put our faith in so many things, like we get in a car and we have faith that it's going to get us there, or in a plane. Some people don't have that faith, they won't enter onto a plane. They don't have the faith that it's going to get there. But we put our faith in so many things, and so there's no harm in putting our faith in the instructions of Shastra and seeing where it gets us. But if we just put our faith in our own ideas, then we're limiting ourselves to that, and we won't be able to see Apurushiya, that which is beyond the range of the senses. To see what is beyond the range of the mind and senses, it's not simply a case of taking some kind of hallucinogen and seeing some colours or some other type of thing which we're not normally seeing. This is also of the material world. And it's a matter of putting our faith in something divine and something sublime and making a little experiment on that and see where it takes us. There's no harm in trying this journey. We try so many things. Why restrict ourselves and why limit ourselves? Simply to allow the mind to dictate what we should do with our human form of life, then we're going to be limited by that. But by taking the instruction of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, then we rise above the confines of the mind and the senses. Okay. Anyone get any questions or comments? Sham.
So Daksha is Narada Muni's brother, and Narada Muni must have known the importance of the role that Daksha was doing. So Daksha was playing a service for Lord Brahma to create progeny. So it seems a bit harsh then to kind of undermine Lord Brahma's work. I know he's doing it for a higher purpose, but at the same time, these guys weren't in Maya. They were actually, they were doing ascetics to prepare themselves for a very, very important task. In one side, it seems a bit harsh.
Yeah, that's typically the attitude of the parent. The parent thinks it's harsh that the devotee comes along and preaches to their son or daughter to give up material life and become a devotee and get out of this material world. But the material world is very harsh. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease, that is very harsh. When it comes to the point of death, if we don't become liberated from this material world, then it's going to be very harsh to go back into the womb and take birth again. So Narada Muni is looking at a greater level of service and compassion. So this is material world is known as Durga Dham. Durga is another name for Maya, and Durga means great difficulty. So Maya's service is to keep us in great difficulty in this material world. But the spiritual master, Narada Muni here, he's been acting compassionately upon them, seeing them as, okay, well, Daksha may have some intention to do something, but I see these persons as spirit souls who are ripe for taking instructions to get out of the material world, and they did. And ultimately the universe was populated, so although Daksha was a bit frustrated, then, he did get his service fulfilled, but still 11,000 souls went back to Godhead on account of Narada Muni. And he understands that, and the spiritual master knows that sometimes people won't be happy with what I'm saying, but we have to say the right thing. Is that okay, or would you like to add something yourself?
Hare Krishna. Actually, I was going to ask make a point, but just on that point that Shyamasundar was saying, there's a story later on of Priyavrata, and he had to get talked into. He didn't want to produce progeny, and Lord Brahma had to come down and say, I assure you, if you do it, that you'll be okay, you'll still be able to go back to Godhead. So on that condition, he was prepared to do it, so you could qualify it, because it says the real father is one who's trying to get him out of material activities. So as long as, if Daksha could turn around and say, well, no, it's okay for you guys, but he couldn't. But when Lord Brahma was able to do that with Maharaj Priyavrata. And I was just going to make a point. It was that sometimes people misunderstand that it seems to be popular now that they say you need to get your material life sorted out first of all, so that otherwise you're putting yourself into insecurity. So you have to put that first, because you may try for a spiritual life and you may fail, and you come out and you won't have any qualifications, you won't be able to get a job, and you'll put yourself in a very awkward situation. And I was just reflecting that maybe what we need to do is encourage devotees to make that jump and understand that they'll be better equipped when they leave, because they'll have skills like communication, confidence, happiness, the meaning of life. So when they leave the ashram, they'll be like these kung fu guys. He went in, and when they finally said, okay, you have to leave the ashram now, he had all these amazing abilities. So he was able to fend for himself better than somebody that just had a PhD.
Yeah, so with Maharaj Priyavrata, he was already a Maharaj, wasn't he? With the Haryashvas, the brahmacharis. So there was that blessing that there was the 4 types of blessings that were given by the sage. One was to the butcher. He says, don't live and don't die. If you live, you're creating so much bad karma, and if you die, you're going to get so much punishment, so don't live, don't die. And to the prince, he says, live, don't die, because by living he's enjoying so much, but when he dies he's going to get a lot of bad karma as well because of what he's been up to. And to the devotee, he said, live or die, it doesn't matter. You're Krishna conscious anyway. Whether you live or whether you die, your mind is in transcendental platform. And to the brahmachari, he says, don't live, die, because while you're brahmachari, you should just go back to Godhead now before you get entangled. Of course, that doesn't mean to say the brahmachari should just head off and get a rope and string themselves up. And brahmachari, better kill myself quick before I fall down. No, we're devotees. In Krishna consciousness and ISKCON, then whether one is in the brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas, we see these as temporary identifications. The eternal identification is the devotee of Krishna. We may be at one point a brahmachari, and then we may be a grihastha, we may be one of the other orders, but what is underlying the whole time is seva, service to Krishna. Yeah, and the other point you were making, there's two ways of looking at it, is that one could say, yeah, get yourself materially sorted so you've got some material security, and then you can go and surrender to Krishna. Another way one could look at it is you surrender to Krishna because there is no material security anyway. What if you spend your life, there was this example given of the Brahmin who was traveling, and he was on some business and he was hungry. And traditionally back in those days, that Brahmins or Hindus wouldn't eat in the house of a Mohammedan, otherwise they'd be considered to lose their caste. And some of these things are simply just some kind of superstition anyway. Like they used to say that if in India, many of the Hindus were converted to Muslims by a Muslim would just sprinkle water on their head. So they created this rumor that if a Muslim put water on your head, then your caste was spoiled. So in this way, they converted many people from Hinduism into Islam. People believed it. Anyway, this Brahmin was visiting some other town. He was out of town and he became hungry. And he decided to chap on a door, see if anyone could feed him. So chapped on the door and says, yeah, I'm traveling, I'm hungry, could you feed me? And so the Mohammedan family says, yes, certainly, come in. And they sat him down and fed him. But there wasn't much food there, so he was still hungry. He said, is there any more? He says, no. He said, I'm afraid that's all we have. We're quite poor. And he said, okay, what caste are you? He says, oh, we're not any caste, we're Mohammedan. So then he lost his caste and he still went hungry. So this is often said in relation to the fact if we try to make ourselves materially secure and then surrender to Krishna, what if in the process of trying to be materially secure, we leave our body? Then what? Neither did we get material security because we don't know when that day is, and neither did we get shelter of Krishna. Therefore, it's said in the Shastra, Prabhupada quotes this, that if one comes across a spiritual master by arrangement or by providence, one should immediately take shelter in that spiritual master. Not like, okay, let me go and get my PhD first, wait till I've got 10,000 in the bank, and then I'll come back. So some people may not want to make that surrender and feel that vulnerability of having to depend on Krishna solely. Some people may not want to do that, but others may want to do that. So I think that's a personal choice, really. But people have to know what is the choice, what is the risks, and then make that informed choice themselves.
Yeah, I was thinking we have quite a lot of professional people in the mental health first aider group, and they're looking to come here because they want to develop skills which will help them become more capable at the job that they want to do. So it's interesting that you can have these superficial material skills, but if you become a good devotee, a good chanter of the holy name, then you'll be on a different level. You'll be empowered to do so many things that just material education. So it's like maybe we should be presenting that this is the positive alternative.
Yeah, better to become a devotee first. That's the main thing, because if we read, I remember one time I was reading one book on the kind of psychology of positive thinking because I was feeling quite negative. And as I was reading it, then I had the Bhagavad Gita as well, and I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and I was realizing actually this is all in the Bhagavad Gita anyway. I just didn't see that. The Bhagavad Gita is like the epitome of positive thinking, where Krishna is empowering Arjuna to do something which he really didn't want to do. And that's often the same for us. We're stuck on what our mental concept is of what we want to do, rather than, okay, what does Krishna want me to do? Let me surrender to that and then see what. And then you see, anytime you surrender to Krishna to do what he wants, whatever you wanted to do will be supplied, and even more so, in such a way that sometimes you think, well, I mean, that example is there. As Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted, a planet greater than Lord Brahma. And then when he's seen Vishnu, he says, actually, I don't want that. I'm embarrassed by having had this desire. But Krishna says, no, I'll give it to you anyway. Because now that you don't want that, I can give it to you knowing you're not going to get entangled by it. So this is the case that sometimes the Lord will fulfill all our material desires, but only if they're not going to be harmful to us. And we don't know the hour when we may pass. So if we spend so much time in material pursuits or trying to find some material security, when actually the fact is there is no material security. Padam, padam, vinyad vi padam. Step after step, there's danger in this material world. Of course, that also doesn't mean to say that therefore we should just remain ignorant and we should all become irresponsible grihastas, etc., like that. So we have to have some kind of, if we know we're going to remain brahmachari, for example, then there's no need to spend so much time in educating ourselves in something we're not going to use in Krishna's service. If we think we're going to become grihasta, then having some kind of occupation and training for that is also a good thing, because therefore we don't become a burden on society. Sometimes it's happened that devotees give their life to the temple, and then you give your life to the temple, the contract, unspoken contract is, I'm doing this as devotional service. It's not like 5 years down the road, I'm going to look back and think, oh, I raised so much funds, what are you doing for me? There was no, we're going to do this for you at the time. So we enter into it knowing that this is devotional service. It's not some kind of material agreement that I'm getting something back from. So therefore we shouldn't allow our devotional service to then become karma kanda, that we want something in return for it. So, but also if we think we're going to become grihasta, then we have to either accept the fact that, okay, if I do leave the ashram, I'm not going to have much skill here, or I have to be prepared to go and get another skill. Or I don't join the ashram until I've got some kind of skill to fall back on, if that's the way we're thinking. But if some people want to join, say, I don't want something to fall back on, then we shouldn't stop that type of surrender. That's up to them to decide. We simply let them know what their choice is, so one can make an informed choice. Otherwise, what happens if we say, no, you should do this, and then they neither become a devotee in the end of it, then what have we done? So we have to be very careful that we don't make the decision for someone who's their decision to make. Let them make the choice. Because devotional service is a willing process. And if we're going to surrender to Krishna, it's us that has to surrender, not someone else who's going to do it for us. So we have to understand what we're capable of, or have enough faith in others that we know that they will guide us through the difficulties. That if we see that they've been through so many difficulties and they're still going, then that's faith that I can do that. The process works. We can see it in some of the very advanced devotees. They're always relishing transcendental bliss. Your mind may be full of doubt, and then you enter into their association and you forget what your doubts were. That's the effect of their association. Okay, any other questions or comments? I better stop, it's getting on a bit. Iskon Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Untitled Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Tagore Premanande.
His Grace Prabhupada Prana Prabhu ki Jai.
Gaura Bhaktavrinda ki.